someone or anyone, pretty much anyone.
Of all the plot lines in Adventure Time, my favorite one has to be the tragic story of Simon Petrikov, one of the saddest characters of any media that I've seen. This is the story of Simon Petrikov and the Magic Crown. But before we dive into Simon's character, we have to understand the crown. In Season 6, Episode 24, we're given a full origin story for the Magic Crown. In the distant past, long before the Mushroom War, Evergreen, the Ice Elemental, created a magic crown that would grant the user's truest wish. His intent was to don the crown and wish for the destruction of the green Catalyst Comet that was closing in on Earth. Unfortunately, he lost his chance to do so, so he entrusted his apprentice Gunter with the important task. Gunter loved his master and thought the world of him, so his deepest desire wasn't for the destruction of the comet, it was to become Evergreen. He would become a distorted version of Evergreen, how he sees it, which is a selfish, powerful ice wizard who bosses people around. This is why the Ice King calls everybody Gunter.
Oh, Gunther, no! Gunther, no! Gunther, no! Gunther, no! Gunther, no!
Let's jump forward a bunch of years to just a few years before the Mushroom War. Simon, a scholar, taught a class on ancient artifacts, which Betty happened to attend. She ran into him later at a library as they tried to check out the same book, and they started to see each other. Betty canceled her trip to help Simon find the Enchiridion, and years later they discovered the Magic Crown. Simon put it on as a gag, but was immediately punished for his actions. This started his descent to madness, and Betty ran away from him. Then the Mushroom War commences. Due to Simon's new powers, he's capable of surviving the mushroom bomb, but now most of the humans are extinct or mutated, and he lives in a post-apocalyptic world, losing his sanity and memories. In this post-apocalyptic world, Simon meets a young Marceline, and it's basically The Last of Us after that. Simon has to use his crown to protect Marcy, but she's scared of what Simon becomes when he wears it, eventually driving the two apart due to Simon completely losing himself and becoming the Ice King. This is still almost 1,000 years before the start of the story of Adventure Time, almost 1,000 years before we even meet Finn and Jake. So you're telling me that this straightforward comic relief gag character who always captures princesses and is always thwarted by Finn and Jake is actually a 1,000-year-old antiquarian genius with a tortured past who can't even remember it? Yep. We actually don't even get a glimpse into the real Simon until Season 3, Episode 19, in a fucking Christmas episode, which is funny because later we see that Santa is a victim of the Magic Crown. In this two-part Christmas episode, we see Finn and Jake watch the Ice King's evil tapes, which turns out to be a video diary. Most of the tapes are just ramblings of an insane, lonely man, but they start to get deeper and deeper, unraveling Ice King's true self. Finally, in the second part of Holly Jolly Secrets, we get the first showing of Simon Petrikov, a solid 2-minute recording of Simon explaining how the crown has affected him. A sprouting white beard, the start to his blue skin, and even the first mention of Betty. Finn and Jake have a moment of empathy for the Ice King, understanding there's more to him.
Now you know my secret. You know that I used to wear glasses.
A full season later, we get the first episode connecting Ice King to Marceline. Season 4, Episode 25, I Remember You. This is one of the saddest episodes you'll ever see, and one of the best episodes of all of Adventure Time, and one of my favorite episodes of media.
And I've got a way tortured past. I think. I don't really.
Ice King goes to his The Past room, where he grabs a bunch of random papers. He flies off to see Marcy and make a song with her. She hates seeing the Ice King. She can't stand being around him. It makes her so sad. He pulls out the paper for inspiration, but they turn out to be notes he wrote for Marceline before he turned into the Ice King. Marceline reads the notes and can't help but to cry.
This magic keeps me alive, but it's making me crazy. And I need to save you. But who's going to save me?
If you go back and watch this episode after seeing the entirety of the series and don't cry, you're not a human. Seeing this disconnect of Ice King to Simon Petrikov, he doesn't remember anything, but Marceline remembers all of it. She's crying, I'm crying. I need a minute, dude. This is the episode that takes the whole show up a level. This is the difference between Schmauzau and Simon Petrikov. And I'm telling you, this is one of the episodes that make you understand really what Adventure Time is. I don't know what else to say about it, man. You just gotta rewatch this episode if you haven't watched it in a while. Episode 48, in Wizard City, a ritual to summon Bella Noche, an entity made up of pure anti-magic, is complete. In the presence of this being, all magic is negated, including the magic crown. Ice King is then reverted to Simon, and he regains his sanity, which he uses to create a time machine to tell Betty goodbye, and she jumps through the portal, and now Betty is in the universe. Simon is dying since he's only being kept alive through the magic of the crown, but Betty manages to return the magic and revert Simon back to the Ice King to keep him alive. She goes off on her own to research magic to revert Simon permanently. At the end of this season, we finally get another follow-up episode to the storyline, and we see Betty caught up with Magic Man. She manages to gain his powers and turn Magic Man into Normal Man, and disappears again. It's not until a few seasons later, in season 7, episode 20, we get more Betty. She kidnaps Gunther to tinker with the magic crown, and then in season 8, episode 1, PB manages to get inside the crown with Marcy when they meet Simon and Betty. They fix the weird stuff that's going on, but once again, an attempt to free Simon from the curse fails. Season 9, episode 3, the Elementals arc is underway, but here we just care about the Betty stuff. Betty asks Ice King to go on a date with him, where she simulates the past and tries to jog his memory.
Bogo! You remember him? Lead the way, Bogo.
This line hits down to my core. The enthusiasm in Betty's voice, she's doing everything she can to bring Simon back. You can see the madness starting to get to her. She's starting to go insane now that she's in this world of magic. She's doing everything she can. She's once again sacrificing everything she has for Simon. In episode 9, Betty uses the Enchiridion to travel back in time to before Simon put on the crown, but fails again. However, this time she's punished, trying to alter time.
You really dogged up.
Forward to season 10, episode 10, we find her on Mars, repenting for her previous actions by filling a giant hole 1 grain of sand at a time. During this episode, she sees a version of herself in the past and keeps that version away from ever meeting Simon. Betty hatches a new plan to save Simon, involving Golb, one of the most powerful beings in all of the Adventure Time universe. Now we find ourselves in the final episode. Come along with me. This holds the climax of the war, but also the conclusion to Betty and Simon's story. Betty summons Golb, and inside Golb, they revert to their true forms, reverting Ice King back to Simon, finally being reunited with Betty, but their time is fleeting. The crown is also reverting, allowing for one wish. Betty first attempted to banish Golb, but he's too powerful, so instead she merged with Golb, sacrificing herself once again to allow for the restoration of Simon. A tragic conclusion to their storyline. But then years later, we're given a spin-off series on Max called Fiona and Cake, and we're given a new conclusion to Simon's character. At the beginning of the series, we meet a distraught older Simon. It's been 12 years since the conclusion of Adventure Time. After his triumph in reverting to Simon, now he feels he doesn't relate to anyone. Betty sacrificed herself to save him, and Marceline is off happy with Bonnibel.
I guess I missed being him in a way. Things felt simpler back then. I was too out of it to understand how screwed up my life was.
What? This is how I cope!
Finn tries to cheer him up, but it doesn't work. And he tries to call Marcy, but she's off having fun, and he doesn't want to depress her. He tries to summon Gold Betty, but fails, and summons Fiona and Cake instead. Since he became normal, he changed their magical world to a normal world as well. And he comes to the conclusion that becoming Ice King again will solve everything. In Adventure Time, every time that we saw Simon, he was cursing the crown. He would rather be dead than the Ice King.
It's my time, Betty. I don't want to be the Ice King again. It's like living with eternal diaper butt. I can't do it.
But now he feels his life is worth so little that he would rather sacrifice himself to make Fiona and Cake's world magic again. Later in the season, he finally comes face to face with Gold Betty. He tries to put on the crown to save Fiona and Cake World, but Gold Betty won't allow it. Instead, she puts him in a world where he can understand what she's sacrificed. He sees that his life is actually worth living.
I think I only offered to become Ice King because I felt my life didn't matter. But I'm really no less worthy of life than Fiona or Cake.
Putting on the crown would erase all the sacrifices Betty's made, and she sacrificed everything. I mean everything. This whole spin-off series brought Simon to the realization that his life is truly worth living. His moments in front of Gold really gave him closure and let him go back to his world in Ooo. Hopefully he can become happy now. As we saw in the last few moments, he was getting therapy, which hopefully that works for him. I want so bad for Simon to be able to be happy in this universe. I know it's just a fictional character, I get that. But I've never really felt so sad for a character. It's just, I feel like this is the most punished, tormented, tortured character in anything I've ever watched. I've watched a lot of anime, I've watched a lot of shows, and this is one of the characters that I feel the most sad about every time I think about it. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe for more. I had a lot of fun looking at this video and exploring characters that I like. I did it once for Meruem as well from Hunter x Hunter. I don't know if you know that, but you know, check that video out. Subscribe to the channel. Look at the graph, man. Subscribe to the channel. Thanks so much. Goodbye.